felt like a day borrowed from a dream. Sunlight spilling over the countryside, fairy lights swaying in the breeze, and the air thick with the scent of roses and champagne. I moved through the venue with a calm smile, trying to be the steady one while Emily's hands trembled over her veil. "You're perfect," I told her, smoothing the lace near her cheek. My voice sounded confident, even though my heart was racing with joy for her. And when Daniel walked in, charming as ever, it almost felt like the world slowed down for a moment, like he was part of the perfection too. Everyone said how lucky I was to have a man like him. Daniel had that kind of presence, the kind that filled a room without trying. He smiled at everyone, said all the right things, and when he wrapped his arm around my waist, it felt like we belonged in every fairy tale photo ever taken. I believed it. God, I really did. For a few hours, the world was made of gold and promises. The music, the laughter, the shimmer of candlelight, it all whispered the same lie, that everything was exactly as it should be. When Emily started walking down the aisle, I couldn't hold back the tears. Daniel squeezed my hand, and I remember thinking, this is what forever must feel like. Every vow they exchanged felt sacred, almost personal, like an echo of my own marriage. But as the night unfolded, something shifted. Daniel's attention slipped somewhere else. His phone kept lighting up. He'd vanish for a few minutes here and there, and I told myself it was work. It was always work. Except, this time it felt different. I tried not to notice the way he kept glancing at his phone. Every few minutes, that familiar vibration on the table would steal his focus, and he'd murmur something about a client emergency. I laughed it off for the sake of the night, for Emily's sake, pretending not to care. After all, Daniel had built a reputation for being indispensable. He was the man everyone counted on, the one who could fix anything with a call or a smile. But deep down, a quiet unease began to settle in my chest, like a chill sneaking in through an open door. At dinner, he leaned close, whispered something about checking the car, and disappeared before I could answer. I didn't think much of it at first, just another quick call, another favor to someone who couldn't live without him. The band started playing, and the dance floor filled with laughter and swirling dresses. I let myself get lost in it for a moment, dancing with my mother, spinning under the string lights. But every time I turned, my eyes searched for him. His absence felt heavier than I wanted to admit. Something about it didn't sit right. When he finally came back, he kissed my temple like nothing had happened. The warmth of his lips should have comforted me, but it didn't. Instead, it felt rehearsed, automatic. He looked tired, distracted, like someone carrying a secret he wasn't ready to put down. I smiled anyway because that's what good wives do at weddings. They smile, they host, they keep things running smoothly. But as the night deepened and his chair stayed empty again, I felt the edges of my perfect day start to fray. By the time the cake was cut, Daniel had vanished again. Guests laughed and toasted, the air buzzing with joy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had quietly broken. I excused myself from a conversation with one of Emily's friends and scanned the crowd. No sign of him. His phone sat abandoned on the table, screen dark. That detail alone sent a ripple of unease through me. Daniel never left his phone unattended. It was practically another limb. I told myself he'd be back any second. Maybe helping one of the staff, maybe taking a breather outside. I tried to focus on Emily, her smile, her glow, the way she looked at her new husband like the world finally made sense. I should have been fully present, soaking in her happiness. But instead, my heart kept thudding with that strange rhythmic question. Where is he? I laughed at myself for worrying. It was just Daniel. It was always just Daniel. Still, when minutes stretched into half an hour, something in me shifted. I slipped off my heels, feeling the cool grass beneath my feet as I stepped out into the night. The fairy lights cast soft halos on the ground, and the music faded behind me. I followed instinct more than reason, that quiet, invisible pull that tells you when something isn't right. And in that silence, under the soft hum of distant laughter, I began to understand that the night wasn't done testing me yet. At first, I tried to laugh it off. Daniel had always been unpredictable at events, charming one moment, vanishing the next. But as the hours stretched and his seat stayed empty, the laughter around me began to sound distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I sent him a quick text. Where are you? No reply. Another message followed, then a call. Straight to voicemail. The pit in my stomach deepened, cold and heavy, as if I already knew the answer I didn't want to find. My mother noticed before anyone else did. She leaned in, her perfume soft and familiar, her voice a low whisper. "Sweetheart, have you seen Daniel?" I forced a smile, the kind that hides panic behind politeness. "He probably stepped out to take a call. You know how he is." She chuckled, shaking her head. "Even tonight? That man and his phone?" I laughed with her, but inside, my heart had already stopped laughing. Something wasn't adding up, and I could feel it. So I slipped away quietly, before anyone else could follow. The night air was cooler than I expected, brushing against my skin like a warning. The music from the reception hall grew faint, replaced by the sound of my own footsteps on the gravel. I rounded the corner toward the garden, the one place guests weren't supposed to wander. The fairy lights stretched into the dark, a path of gold leading to something I didn't yet understand. My pulse quickened. And then I heard voices. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, the kind that come when your nerves are stretched too thin. But the voices were real, low, intimate, familiar. I took another step, my bare feet silent against the stone path. That's when I saw them, framed perfectly under the arch of flowers I had spent weeks helping Emily choose. Daniel and Clara, the wedding decorator. His hands rested easily around her waist, her fingers tracing the lapel of his suit like she'd done it 100 times before. I froze. My body reacted before my brain could make sense of it. Every muscle locking in place, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and rage. The music from the reception drifted faintly through the trees, a cruel soundtrack to what I was watching. Clara's laugh, soft, almost shy, cut through the night. "You should tell her soon," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "It's not fair to keep pretending." Daniel's reply came so easily, so practiced, it made my skin crawl. "I will, after tonight. She deserves to hear it in private." That word, deserves, hit me like glass, shattering inside my chest. My vision blurred, but my anger was crystal clear. I stepped forward, the grass crunching beneath my feet. My voice came out steady, sharper than I expected. "You're right, Daniel. I deserve it. So go ahead. Tell me now." The sound of my voice cut through the air like a blade. Daniel spun around, his face draining of color faster than I thought humanly possible. Clara gasped, stumbling backward as if guilt itself had weight. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Just the wind moving through the trees, the fairy lights flickering above us like they too didn't want to see. I could see the panic in his eyes, the calculations already happening behind them. He wasn't sorry, not yet. He was just caught. "Olivia," he started, his voice breaking into a shaky half-laugh. "This isn't what it looks like." I almost pitied the effort. "Really?" I said, crossing my arms even as my hands trembled. "Because from here it looks exactly like betrayal." Clara opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize, but I didn't give her the chance. "You shouldn't have meant for it at all." The words felt cold, detached, like someone else was speaking through me, someone stronger, someone done pretending. Daniel took a step toward me, reaching out as if touching me could erase the truth hanging between us. I pulled away. The disgust that rushed through me was almost liberating, the final proof that something inside me had broken cleanly, permanently. "Go back to the party," I said, my voice low but steady. "Smile for the photos, dance for the crowd. But tonight, you showed me who you are, and I won't forget it." Then I turned, walking toward the lights, toward the noise, toward the world that was about to find out. I didn't even feel my feet hit the ground as I stormed back toward the hall. Only the heat rising up my spine and the trembling in my hands. Every face blurred as I passed, every laugh sounded distant, unreal. When I finally stopped near the back entrance, Daniel was already there, running after me like the villain in a movie who suddenly wants a rewrite. "Olivia, please," he said, his voice cracking, desperate. "It's not what you think." I turned to face him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. "It's exactly what I think," I said quietly. My voice didn't need to be loud. It carried enough truth to cut through anything. His lips parted, searching for a lie that might stick. "It was a mistake," he said, eyes darting, tone rehearsed. "It just happened." I almost laughed at that, the absurdity of a man trying to dress up betrayal as an accident. "A mistake," I repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You kissed another woman at my sister's wedding. How do you accidentally destroy a marriage?" He rubbed his hands over his face, the picture of remorse he thought I needed to see. But it was too late for that. The man I loved, or the version I built in my head, was gone. And in his place stood someone who had gambled our vows for a moment of excitement. "I didn't want to hurt you," he whispered. I looked right at him and said, "Then you shouldn't have done it." The silence that followed was almost merciful, heavy, final. But I wasn't done yet. Clara stood a few steps away, frozen in place, her eyes glossy with tears that did nothing for me. She tried to speak, some fragile apology forming on her lips, but I stopped her with a single look. "You decorate weddings for a living," I said, my voice steady now, almost calm. "You make beauty for people who believe in love. Tell me, Clara, do you still believe in it after this?" Her face crumpled. I didn't wait for an answer. I didn't need one. Some things don't deserve closure. Daniel tried again, his tone shifting from guilt to pleading. "It didn't mean anything," he said. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "Then why risk everything for nothing?" I asked. He didn't respond. His silence said enough. The fairy lights around us flickered in the wind, and I remember thinking how strange it was, that something so beautiful could feel so cruel. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him. But I didn't. Instead, I stood tall. There's a kind of power that comes when the worst has already happened. I felt it then, a steady calm cutting through the chaos. "You should go back inside," I said. "You wouldn't want to miss dessert." His lips parted in confusion, maybe fear. He didn't understand that I wasn't planning to make a scene in the dark. No, that part was coming later, under the lights, in front of everyone. The truth deserved witnesses. I turned away before he could say another word. The grass crunched beneath my heels, each step louder than the last, like a drumbeat announcing the end of something sacred. Behind me, Daniel called my name, but I didn't stop. For once, I didn't feel the urge to fix it, to soothe it, to pretend. I let the silence between us stretch and snap. Every promise, every late-night confession, every whispered forever we'd built together, all of it fell apart in that quiet walk back to the hall. The sound of music grew louder as I got closer. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of celebration, the world spinning on, oblivious to the fact that mine had just split in two. I paused at the door, staring through the glass at everyone dancing. They looked so blissfully unaware, caught up in joy. And maybe that's what struck me the most. How normal it all was. How pain could coexist with happiness in the same room, without anyone noticing the fracture in the air. I straightened my dress, wiped a tear from the corner of my eye, and took a deep breath. There was no rage, no hysteria, just clarity. He'd humiliated me in whispers and shadows. I would answer him in light. I stepped inside, the sound of applause washing over me as the band started another song. My heart was beating fast, not from heartbreak anymore, but from resolve. Because if Daniel wanted to play pretend, I was about to end the act for good. The second I walked back into that hall, it was like stepping into another world, one that hadn't caught up with the truth yet. Laughter still rippled through the air, wine glasses clinked, and the fairy lights glowed like nothing had happened. Daniel followed a few steps behind me, his voice low, pleading, almost panicked. "Olivia, please, don't do this," he whispered. And in that moment, I realized, for the first time, he wasn't worried about me. He was worried about himself. About the mask slipping, about everyone finally seeing who he really was. I made my way to the DJ's table, my heels clicking in perfect rhythm with the music. "Could I borrow this for a second?" I asked, taking the microphone before he could respond. The crowd turned, curious, smiling, assuming I was about to make a sweet toast. Daniel reached for my arm, his touch a warning I ignored. I lifted my chin and smiled. the kind of smile that hides the storm underneath. "Sorry to interrupt," I began, my voice light, steady. "I just wanted to say a few words." The chatter died down, replaced by the faint hum of curiosity. I scanned the room. Emily and her new husband smiling, my mother looking proud, Clara trying to shrink behind the dessert table like a child caught stealing. I felt every pair of eyes on me, and oddly, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Truly seen. "To my sister, Emily," I said, raising my glass, "may your marriage be built on trust, loyalty, and love, qualities not every man in this room possesses." The first ripple of whispers spread like wildfire. For a heartbeat, the room stayed frozen, the kind of silence that tastes electric, charged, dangerous. I saw my mother's smile falter, confusion flickering in her eyes. Daniel tried to reach for the mic, whispering through clenched teeth, "Olivia, enough." I didn't even look at him. I wasn't done. I took a sip of champagne and smiled again, this time colder, steadier. "And to Daniel," I continued, "for showing me, on this beautiful night, exactly who he really is." A collective gasp followed, soft but undeniable, like the air itself had stopped breathing. Clara's face went pale. Her lipstick, so carefully applied hours earlier, now looked smudged, evidence and guilt written in red. Daniel's jaw tightened. I could practically feel the panic radiating off him. Still, I kept my tone polite, even warm, like I was sharing an anecdote instead of detonating a secret. "You know," I said, turning toward the crowd, "some vows get broken quietly, behind the hall, under fairy lights." The whispering grew louder now, rippling through tables, spreading like a wave of disbelief. I looked at Emily, my sister, my bride, and her expression broke me a little. Shock, sadness, fierce protectiveness all tangled together. I gave her the smallest nod, as if to say, "I'm okay. This is mine to finish." Then I placed the microphone back in the DJ's hands, the sound of feedback cracking through the air like punctuation. Daniel stood there, eyes wide, the mask gone for good. I set my glass down carefully, turned, and began walking toward the exit. One step, then another, each one lighter than the last. The whispers followed me all the way to the door, a symphony of shock, curiosity, and judgment blending into one strange harmony. But I didn't care. For once, the noise didn't define me. My heels struck the marble floor like exclamation points, sharp and certain. I passed the tables lined with gold-trimmed plates and half-finished glasses of wine, each one a little monument to the lie I'd just dismantled. People avoided my gaze, though I could feel them watching, the woman who turned her heartbreak into a spectacle of truth. As I reached the exit, Daniel called out my name, his voice thick with desperation. I stopped, not out of love or pity, but because part of me wanted him to see the calm on my face. "You did this," I said simply. No shouting, no tears, just fact. "You broke us in the shadows. I ended it in the light." His expression twisted, a mix of anger and humiliation, but I didn't wait to see which one won. I pushed open the door, and the night air rushed over me like freedom. Outside, the sky was ink black and endless, the fairy lights flickering above like tiny witnesses. I could still hear the muffled chaos inside, voices rising, stories forming, but I was done performing. The cool air filled my lungs, and with it came a strange, quiet clarity. I wasn't the woman who arrived at this wedding smiling beside her husband anymore. That woman had died behind the floral arch. The one walking away? She was just beginning. The morning after felt eerily quiet, like the world had paused just long enough for me to breathe again. My phone was full of messages, apologies, gossip, concern disguised as curiosity. I ignored them all. I made myself coffee, sat by the window, and watched the light crawl slowly across the floor. For the first time in years, there was no rush, no pretending, just silence. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was the closest thing I'd had in a long time. And in that stillness, I decided something simple. I was done cleaning up Daniel's messes. By noon, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, signing my name on a stack of papers that officially ended what had already died the night before. The pen felt heavy, like it knew what it meant. When I looked up, the lawyer gave me that soft, knowing smile, the kind people give when they've seen this story 1,000 times. "You're doing the right thing," she said. I nodded, even though part of me still ached. Ending something doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you finally choose yourself instead. News spread fast, faster than I expected. People whispered, speculated, twisted the story to fit their own narrative. Clara lost her contract with the event company within days, and Daniel's pristine image at work began to crumble. I didn't gloat, but I won't lie. Knowing the truth had a voice louder than his lies brought me a strange sense of balance. I didn't need revenge and fire or fury. The truth itself was enough. And sometimes, silence can be the loudest victory. A few days later, Emily showed up at my door, still glowing from her honeymoon, but carrying that heavy look only a sister can wear when she's worried. She didn't say anything at first. She just hugged me. Tight. Long enough for both of us to start crying without meaning to. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. I pulled back, brushing away her tears. "Don't be," I said softly. "You didn't ruin anything. He did. And I'm done trying to hold together what was never mine to fix." Saying it out loud felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. We sat together for hours, talking, laughing, even revisiting childhood memories, the kind that make everything feel a little lighter. She asked me what I'd do now, and I told her the truth. Live, really live. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. It was a quiet promise to myself. I wanted to see the world without someone else's shadow over me. I wanted to feel sunlight that didn't have to filter through someone else's lies. For once, I wanted to exist on my own terms, not as someone's wife, someone's secret, or someone's disappointment. So I packed a suitcase, booked a flight, and went to Italy. The trip Daniel and I had planned for our anniversary. Except this time, it was mine. I spent mornings walking through cobblestone streets, afternoons sipping espresso near the water, and nights writing in a journal I hadn't opened in years. One evening, I wrote a single line that felt truer than anything I'd ever said. He stole my peace for years, but now, I'm taking it back one sunrise at a time. And with every word, I started to believe it. Italy became my quiet teacher. I learned how to eat alone without feeling lonely, how to sit in silence without needing to fill it. I'd wake up early to watch the city stretch awake, shopkeepers sweeping their doorsteps, the smell of espresso drifting through the streets, church bells marking the hours I no longer counted. I'd spend afternoons by the water, watching reflections ripple and shift, realizing how change can be beautiful when you stop resisting it. Every day felt like another piece of me coming back home. One morning, as I watched a couple arguing near a cafe, I caught my reflection in the window, calm, older, maybe wiser. For the first time, I didn't see the woman who'd been betrayed. I saw someone who had survived, rebuilt, and chosen herself over the ruins. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't arrive in grand gestures. It came softly, in laughter shared with strangers, in the rhythm of my own footsteps, in the quiet joy of realizing I could be whole without anyone's permission. When my plane ticket home arrived, I didn't hesitate. I was ready. The life I was returning to wasn't the same one I'd left, and neither was I. I didn't need closure from Daniel, or validation from anyone who'd watched our marriage crumble. The chapter had closed itself. What waited ahead was unknown, but for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. And deep down, I knew. This wasn't an ending. It was the start of everything I'd been too afraid to imagine. A year later, I stood in the same garden where everything had fallen apart. Only this time, it wasn't pain that filled the air. It was laughter, music, life. Emily and her husband were celebrating their first anniversary, and the venue had been transformed again. Soft lights, golden decor, familiar faces. The place that once held my heartbreak now held my healing. I caught my reflection in one of the glass doors and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were lighter. Her shoulders no longer carried what wasn't hers to bear. Marcus's hand slipped into mine, steady, gentle, real. He wasn't Daniel. He didn't try to charm or fix or impress. He just was. Present. Kind. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke, who held space instead of attention. We weren't perfect, but we were honest, and that felt like more than enough. When he looked at me, I didn't see comparison or suspicion. I saw someone who saw me, entirely. And for the first time in so long, that was all I wanted. As Emily raised her glass for a toast, her gaze found mine. "A year ago," she said softly, "this wedding broke something, but it also set someone free." I smiled, feeling the truth of it sink deep into my bones. When it was my turn to speak, I lifted my glass toward her. "To freedom," I said, "and to never settling for love that hides in the dark." The guests cheered, their voices echoing into the night, the same night that once swallowed my tears, now carrying laughter instead. The fireworks started just as the music swelled, bursts of color spilling across the night sky, painting the darkness with light. I tilted my head back, watching them scatter like memories, brilliant and fleeting. A year ago, that sound would have made me flinch. Tonight, it felt like applause. Around me, people laughed and hugged, their faces glowing in the reflection of gold and silver sparks. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the warmth of it all settle deep inside. This wasn't the ending I once imagined. It was better. Emily squeezed my hand, her smile soft, full of understanding only sisters share. "You look happy," she said. I nodded. "I am." And I meant it. Happiness didn't roar anymore. It hummed quietly, like a secret between me and the life I'd rebuilt. Marcus leaned close, his arm wrapping around my shoulders as we watched the last firework fade into smoke. I rested my head against him, feeling that rare stillness, not because everything was perfect, but because I finally stopped trying to make it so. The crowd began to cheer again, glasses clinking, laughter rising under the stars. I smiled, looking out at the garden that had once been my undoing, and now felt like redemption. My voice, calm and certain, echoed softly in my mind, the closing line I'd carry forever. He broke our vows behind the hall, but I kept my promise to myself, never to stay small for someone who lies.